Hi everyone, Lemur here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Crysta, the newest hunter in SUPERVIVE. This video is going to be a bit more advanced and not really going over her main abilities, but rather show you interesting ways to utilize her kit to the fullest and pull off plays that no one really else is going to be doing on day one. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, the first thing that we're going to talk about is powers on Crysta. So whenever I was first thinking about the hunter and reading her kit, I was a little bit confused because I'm like, what powers does this character use? You don't want invis, blink is pretty good on her, like rewind's alright, whatnot. Then I started thinking about her passive. Your abilities mark enemies that your basic attacks and ult detonate. I got to thinking, I'm like, abilities, do these count as powers? And well, let me just say that perhaps Snowball Launcher might be one of Crysta's best powers. Each time you use a snowball, it'll actually apply a mark onto the target hit. I'm not sure whether this is intended or not, but we're going to use it until it gets nerfed. Alright. Over here is all the powers that I tested that indeed worked with all of these interactions. In fact, you could even throw an Abyssal Fang on an entire enemy team and mark them all at once, and then use your ulti. This is super impactful and even works on things like EMP grenades. Honestly, there's probably like a million other things out there that I didn't even test that still proc your passive, but that is definitely something that you should be thinking about and something that you guys can mess around and practice tool as well. Next up, this one may be a bit obvious to some people, but to others it might not be super obvious. Her RMB Flux Snare actually hits the target 2 times. So one of the things that you could do is you can use your RMB, hit once, have it come back, hit again. Always just whenever you're farming and doing creeps, always just try to always get 2 hits of your passive. It'll also make your dash come up sooner and give you more mana back based on your reverberation passive. Additionally, with her RMB, there are things that stop it. For instance, if you hit a wall, it'll bounce back immediately. If you do have an opponent, in front of you, you want to hit them really quickly. Sometimes hitting a wall actually can increase your damage. However, if you hit a wall going back to you, projectile will just completely disappear. So that's really important to know, just so that you know what is happening with your RMB, especially when you're trying to have it returned to you. Next up would be Crysta. Next up would be Crysta's RMB and how you can control it better. One thing that I would recommend that you practice is using her RMB and controlling it with however you want to. There's a lot of different techniques that you could do to kind of manipulate her RMB and get it to go around certain things. Something that I found that was pretty interesting, and I'm not sure how applicable, but you throw out your RMB and pivot your camera to the side, you can kind of land some nasty like flick shots, but also do some really unexpected things that I'm sure one day someone will find some way to break the game in some shape or form. Next up, we're going to be talking about our dash. So this dash, whenever you land one of your reverberation passives, will get reduced on cooldown. The level 4 upgrade on this means that if you proc your passive, it instantly gets a charge back. So this sounds ridiculously OP, and it probably is for the most part. However, one thing I do want to point out is whenever you do max your dash, you no longer get the 2 seconds reduced charge time on your dash. Instead, you just get your dash cooldown back. So it's hard to tell what the cooldown actually is on here because it's not 0.5, but you are effectively losing the 2 seconds on this. So there will be times where honestly I don't think you actually level up your dash, but I'm pretty sure most people are going to be recommending that you do that. Maybe it is OP, maybe it's not, but something that I'm looking at with my level ups is maybe maxing out my Magi Reactive Burst, which is for you, to explode a second time. And then along with her dash, one of the things that you can do with your dash is obviously you can dash and glide. Very obvious at this point for most hunters in SUPERVIVE. However, you can do kind of the Ghost B-Hop tech that you can do with Ghost, where you... Oh, my game was lagging a little bit, but you do that. Yeah. However, Ghost gets reduced cooldown for doing that. Crysta doesn't necessarily get reduced cooldown. Instead, she just gets a little bit extra distance. So this is something that's good to practice, that if you don't want to just jump and glide because maybe you're in a fight, then knowing how to do the, kind of slide rather than this might be helpful sometimes. Alternatively, you could just B-hop out of this and it will be fine as well. Alright. There's like a few movement options there that you have, but just knowing how each one works and how to do each one help you get the most out of the character, especially when you're trying to kite away and run from people and don't want to pull out your glider. Something that I did want to point out is that her LMBs, they go from the left and right of her. That's called Maybell and Boo. So I guess one's Maybell, one's Boo. I don't know which one's which, but these LMBs actually come from the center of her hitbox rather than the side. And so you can effectively just shoot through walls like this, even though it looks like you probably can't on your left side. However, when you do dash and you position yourself here, only one of your LMBs will go. I don't know if this is an intended bug or whatnot, but one of the LMBs will get stuck in the wall right here, and the other will go over there. Oh my god, there's new pings. Cool. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about with her dash is that it is a LMB reset. So every LMB in SUPERVIVE has a cooldown. For instance, hers is probably like 0.3 or something between her cooldowns. But this does reset your LMB kind of like Kingpin's dash with this upgrade on level 4. So for instance, you can LMB and shoot another one, alright? However, this double dash does give you a buff. So for instance, on the right, we can see how long this buff lasts, and it lasts a significant amount of time, alright? So one of the things that you can do with it is you can dash, kind of wait around, you know, you're about to have a fight, and then you can dash, double dash, and then you can almost get another dash if you had landed one of your passive procs. That's like a huge burst combo that you could do that I guarantee you not a lot of people will be expecting. Next, we're going to be talking about Magi Reactive Burst, her Q. This ability is kind of like a Void's Bomb, except for it has a projectile that actually goes outward. Whenever you stand in this, it does nothing. Enemies can just stand in this, and if you can't activate it, then, you know, that does nothing, alright? I think this ability is actually very, very strong, and something to take note of it is because it is a projectile, it has a travel time, which means that the further away you are from someone, the longer it'll take to go out. But if, say, a Brawl or Jhin are on top of you and you just throw it on yourself, you could pretty much activate it almost instantly and get a passive on the target. Yeah, I think that this ability might be a super underrated ability that might be really, 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 really strong. Alright, next up we're going to be talking about Nuclearite Salvo, her ultimate, which fires 6 energy beams at a target. I don't know why it says 5. They go left, right over her shoulder, and then the last one fires 2. The aiming scheme is a little bit different from most abilities in SUPERVIVE, and actually kind of tracks your mouse. So if you look at where the lines go, the closer you are to your character, the more split up they'll kind of be, because the left and right are aiming at your mouse. So usually the best way to aim this ability is just to put your mouse very far, depending what you want. Obviously you can go for some crazy trick shots like this, but you're generally going to be wanting to put your mouse pretty far out onto your screen, aim at your targets that way. One thing to note about this ability is that it does proc and detonate your reverberation passive, so you can use this and kind of just go crazy with your dashes. For instance, I'm going to use both my dashes now, and then whenever I ulti this, we get 2 dashes back without even our double dash at level 4. So this can be super strong, and this ability can hit multiple targets. So it can hit monsters while you're in the middle of a fight, it can hit multiple enemies. This can proc your passive like crazy, and I mean, I was playing some bot games, and obviously bots, you know, aren't the best, but you can land a crazy amount of resets and do crazy stuff with this ability. And one thing I did want to point out is that this ability does go through destructibles. So tree prison being one of the easiest ways to see it in action. You could just shoot right through the trees and it just kills all of the trees. So it definitely can be good. It also goes through chonker cannons I tested earlier. It goes through most destructibles. And finally, we're going to be talking about the build. If I'm 100% honest, I don't know what the best build on this character is and what ability you should even max. All right. In my experience, Tech Blade is always a very good option. So I would probably get Tech Blade and probably lean towards Interweaver, as it's just like an all-around good item, and I don't see Amplifier working well. Maybe Power User if you open up 2 volts and have good powers. Right? And then for the second item, it kind of depends on how much you're landing your shots, because every time you proc Reverberation, you do get 30 mana back, which is a sizable amount of mana when you have 300 mana. So you might not end up needing a Mana Blade, but that's just something that you're going to have to experiment with and decide for yourself. You always can go Meditation Boots as well if you don't want to go a Mana Blade, and see how that works out for you. Lastly, with builds, One thing I did want to note on is a lot of characters, whenever they hold their LMB, they get slowed a lot, right? However, Crysta, she really doesn't get slowed that much. If you look at her movement speed, she loses around 40 whenever she has a quick blade. So I do think that maybe a quick blade build with maybe a turbo booster or big game hunter can actually help her out a lot with her kiting. But we're gonna have to see, but that's kind of my thoughts. Tech blade and quick blade both look pretty decent, and I'm not sure if she needs a mana item. Alright, and the last thing that we're going to talk about is her level 4 upgrades. Honestly, don't listen to anyone that tells you that they know exactly which upgrade you should go every time, because I think that all of them are pretty close, and at least with her dash and her Q, I think that there are some pretty good reasons to take both of them. I think my first instinct, looking at the dash, it does seem very enticing to pick this one. But I do think that since you lose out on the 2 seconds reduced charge time on your dash, you kind of only get maybe 3 seconds of your dash charge time, which does seem pretty freaking good. But I would also encourage you to experiment with things like the Magi Reactive Burst, giving a double hit, because that actually can do a crazy amount of damage. Like if you look at the damage this thing does, that's a lot of damage. A lot of damage for an ability that seems to me pretty easy to land. I would not always just, if you're trying out the character, I would not always just try doing double dash. Try mixing it up. Try the Magic Reactive Burst. And also, this one, I'm not quite sure how good it is. Obviously, you can hit multiple enemies with your RMB, but I'm not sure it can compete with the other two. But that is just my opinions on them. I'm going to be playing Crysta on my stream today, as well as throughout the week, and trying to figure out what the best build is. If you ever want to stop by, it's twitch.tv/RyanLemur. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys out there. Later.